Thank you very much, everybody, for joining me. I know this is after lunch, and so I was really hoping people wouldn't be going with the after lunch nap and instead would join me this afternoon, so it's great to see so many faces. Thank you very much. My name is Robert Sell, and today I'll be presenting to you The Art of the Breach. So thank you for joining. Before I get into the talk, I'll tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm doing this talk. I think that's important. So my life really focuses around three different areas. And the first area is Trace Labs. You may have heard of us. We're a nonprofit, and we focus on crowdsourcing open source information in order to help law enforcement find missing persons. And we're doing a CTF out there today, so if you're curious about our organization and what we do, or if you just want to learn a little bit more about open source intelligence and some best practices and techniques, Tom and Alex, who are directors, they're out there as well. So we've got the full team out there today. So please come by if you have any interest at all, and we can talk to you about that. There's a picture here of me. The top right picture there is me in Latvia, I believe, talking to a group of emergency management folks with a picture of me in the background, which was taken in Vancouver, but was on Australian TV. So it's me in Latvia, in Vancouver, in Australia, all in one photo, talking about what we do at Trace Labs. So that's one big component of my life. So my exposure to open source intelligence, I would say, is pretty vast. We do a number of operations, 650 people in one of our global events, and so I get exposure to a lot of different techniques in open source intelligence. The other big component of my life is search and rescue. And so you can kind of think of search and rescue and my involvement there as a team lead and also as a tracker as the physical representation of what we do in OSINT. So in our digital jobs online, this is really taking that into the woods. So if you come to Canada one day, you get lost on the West Coast in the forest, I might be one of the people out there looking for you. I encourage that. You know, it gets me out of the house. It's fun for me, not always fun for the people that are lost, but it's a great adventure for both parties. That's a picture of me in the helicopter going out to some mountain, getting dropped off there somewhere. Also, I've competed in the DEF CON Social Engineering Village contest twice. I came in third both years, so I gave that up after coming in third twice. And then there's another picture of me in Australia working in partnership with the Australian police to do a big hackathon there that was spanned the whole country. It was really, really amazing. We brought the families in of the missing persons, so it was really great exposure. So those are the two components. The third and final one is my day job. So I get to travel around the world, really doing global IT and information security, taking a look at different international sites and making sure that they are secure. And that's really going to be a big component of this talk. I think there's a little bit of everything in this talk for people. So if you're interested in open source intelligence, or if you're interested in physical security and some other things, you're going to get a little bit of both in this talk. So that's at a high level who I am. My contact information is there as well if you want to reach out to me and discuss any of the things that we'll be talking about today. So this talk is a bit of an adventure. We're going to go from sidewalk all the way into executive office, and better yet, into the filing cabinet in the executive office. That's going to be our journey today, and we're going to take three different approaches, or three different options on that journey. So we're going to look at what we're used to, right, is passive entry, I like to call it, which would include social engineering. Then we're also going to look at covert entry, which we're also familiar with, which is lockpicking, right, or bypass. And then finally, my favorite is forced entry. And that's really whatever it takes for us to go from here to there. And the reason I like that is because if we're looking at criminal activity, they're not always going to waste time trying to social engineer or pick a lock. They might just break the door handle down and just walk in, right? So we're going to add that element as one of our methods for entry, right? And we're going to talk about what's the best option as we proceed through your building. And I say your building because you can think of me as the attacker, and I'm going to talk about what might work and what might not as far as our options. And in most slides, I'm going to put a little piece at the bottom of each slide, which I call defend. And that is a piece that I hope you can take away with you and go back to your organization and say, hey, this is how we might be able to improve our physical security. Some little options there. So it's not all about the attack. There's some defend in here as well. Now, I have to do a disclaimer. There's a couple things I need to cover real quick. One, everything I say here today in no way reflects any past, present, or future employer of mine. And then secondly, please don't try these things just against any company or building, because it's criminal and you'll probably go to jail and nobody likes that. And then finally, on the forced entry side of it, it's really exciting and fun, but I would encourage everyone to go out there and take a course in forced entry. You can do that. It's not just for firemen. A lot of the knowledge that I've received has been from firemen that I know in search and rescue. But it's open to the public. I have some references at the very end that you can take a look at, some books and stuff that you can read, which will show you the details of this. But don't go out and just start doing it, because you could hurt yourself pretty seriously with that. All right, so this is a bit of a map of our journey. So we're going to kind of go through these different stages. I'm going to spend more time on some than others, but we're going to work our way through the building all the way up, and then finally we're going to do our escape and evade out of the building as well. So as an attacker, you can kind of see the mindset and how you might defend at each stage of that journey. First, stage one is really researching the target. And I can't stress this enough. In Trace Labs, one of the things we talk about is preparing, getting set up, right? And everybody wants to just jump right into the adventure. And I always encourage people just to take a moment, right? Let's take a minute and make sure we're set up properly. What we want to be doing as stage one is passive reconnaissance, right? Zero-touch recon. We don't want to set off any alarm bells. We want to be gentle in our approach, the most gentle we can possibly be at this point, right? And we want to have good OPSEC, right? We don't want to expose ourselves right away, if ever, right? That's really the trick as an attacker. So before you start, think about, how am I going to get set up? Am I going to have a virtual VM for my OSINT? Highly recommend it. Trace Labs has a VM that we produce. You can talk to the team out there if you're interested in that. We'll help you download it and get it set up. It's a great tool. Sock puppets, are you going to utilize sock puppets? Not everybody will. If you're not going to utilize sock puppets, at least become familiar with the settings. For example, in LinkedIn, so that people don't see you looking at everybody's profile within the whole company, right? You can do that. So at least be familiar with these sites' privacy settings and things like that. VPN, is your VPN set up? I'm sure everybody in here uses a VPN. It's handy not only for privacy, but also it can spoof where you are, your location, and stuff like that. And then how are you organizing your intelligence, right? So if you're going to be looking at that later, or maybe you're going to be using that as evidence later, it's so important to make sure that you're organized, and there's lots of tools out there that can help you do that, but at least have a bit of a method in mind as you're going through that, right? So researching is really important just before you do anything, right? And then once you're set up, once you're comfortable with how you want to proceed, now we want to actually get into our target focus, right? Understanding their business. And when I competed in the social engineering CTF in Vegas, DEF CON there, this was really interesting to do, right? Going through the business and researching what they do, how they do it, their projects, their products. And the reason we're doing this is to develop pretext, right? So we're able to show up at their site and speak the language and be an employee, right? Or be a contractor. And if someone speaks to us, we can really relate to those things, right? We also want to understand the vendors that they have, because maybe I want to become a vendor so that I can gain entry. And the other thing I'm going to be looking for is the social butterflies, and I'll talk about this more. Those are the people within the company that are going to expose all the things that I want to learn about, right? They're going to tell me about the VPN. They're going to tell me about if there's a cafeteria, if there's a gym. There's a small percentage of employees that give everything, right? So those are the people I want to find. So you'll see at the bottom of this slide, this is the first instance where it says defend. Those are some of the things you could think about, right, to protect yourself against this stage, right? Do OSINT on your executives. This is fun. Maybe talk to them before you do it, but you can find out a lot about how much they're sharing. Look at, is your infrastructure advertised online? Do you advertise who all your vendors are? Is the floor plan online, right? Identify those social butterflies. And those people could be excellent for maybe a little bit more training, right, on maybe not doing that. And then understanding the infrastructure, and this is even more interesting as an attacker, right? I want to know what the perimeter looks like, what those different layers look like. I'm going to go online, look for a floor plan. Your property management company probably advertises the floor plan, believe it or not. I want to look at how the doors work, how I can move from level to level, what that looks like. Who are your different vendors, your providers? Do you have a cafeteria? Do you have a gym? HVAC. I love HVAC because I know a little bit about it, so I'm going to always focus on things I know about. So I can talk shop that way, right? So what kind of infrastructure do you have? Ingress, egress points as well. I want to be looking at that. Loading docks are great. Any sort of back door or any alternate ingress, egress points that I can utilize. Front doors are often where all the energy is spent, right? So I want to really take a look at that. Company tours on YouTube. Not a great idea because it shows the access cards. It shows everything I need to know. One of the things I utilized was that, and I really didn't need to go anywhere else. It just showed me everything. What kind of door handles they use, what kind of locks they use, everything. So, I mean, it's super helpful as an attacker, but so I don't recommend that. So if your company has that, you may want to remove that. Now we're moving to stage 2. Now we're going to take all that information we collected, and now we're familiar with the company. Now we can utilize that to prepare some pretexts. So as an attacker, if I'm going to go in and someone's going to approach me, I need to be able to say what I'm doing. And it's not going to be, I'm going to break into your executive office. It needs to be something where they're going to go, oh, okay, come on in. So there's a few here that some I like, some I don't like, right? So new employee or contractor, maybe, but it's not my favorite. Parking attendant doing maintenance survey. I kind of like that one. It's not too bad. Internet technician planning new fiber run. This one is used by a lot of physical pen testers. And again, not my favorite, but it seems to work. Garbage or document shredding, maybe. HVAC technician, I like that one, not only because I know it, but I think it works well. New personal trainer, janitor, or plant care technician, yeah, maybe security guard. I always recommend never take a persona of security, fire, police, or anything like that. One, it can be illegal in your area, and two, I just don't think it's good practice. As far as defending, asking for government-issued ID at reception, just make that a rule. Because so many times somebody could just give you their business card or something else, and then you let them in, and that's, of course, fake, right? You can make great-looking business cards. You can have the whole wardrobe, everything else, but government-issued ID is usually pretty good. So I would suggest that. And then preparing backup pretexts. So things always go wrong, right? If you're going into a company and it's got some legitimate security, people are going to have, they're going to have defenses, and they're going to catch on, perhaps, to you, right? So having a backup plan as far as what happens when someone approaches you, right? And they don't buy your first pretext. One of the ones I really like is, yeah, you caught me, congratulations. You know, that's great. You're going to win a prize maybe, right? And then telling them, hey, I'm doing a pen test, and or something like that. I was hired and to check your security, right? And then congratulating them on being so smart and catching you, and then proceeding to do what you're there to do, right? It makes them feel good. Anytime in social engineering, anytime you can make the other person feel good, like they won and they're smart, you're usually going to be at better odds, right? So that's why I like that one. Property management representation, doing a lock test, locksmith, locked out of my office, maybe not. Just an employee who's interested in doing security, you know, playing dumb. Social engineering, I find that the two best approaches, one is congratulating the person and making them feel really good, or demeaning yourself and making yourself look dumb. If you can do both at the same time, that's even better. But either of those two options work really well, right? It's hard to defend against that. We're just innately built that way. Yeah, and as an attacker, I want to be unapproachable, right? So whatever you can do to do that is great. A worker who's in there, who's in a hurry, who you know just wants to get stuff done and get out of there, or maybe you're late, right? All those things that are time sensitive. Don't bug me, don't stop me, just let me go. If you have someone in your office like that, then that doesn't want to talk to you or doesn't want to show ID, that's a red flag, right? So whenever I have vendors or people in my office that I don't know, I make a habit of saying, hey, hi, how you doing? Just trying to make a little bit of small talk, and if they resist, that would be a red flag, right? So if you're not getting alerts to show you who the visitors are coming into your office, which I think is a good idea, especially in a smaller office, then I would always take a look at that. Like, who is that person? If people don't know, that should be a red flag. Okay, we've done our research, we've prepared our pretext, we're feeling pretty good about that, right? We could defend our position once we're on site. Now we're moving into stage 3, which is on-site reconnaissance. Now, if someone's going to break into your building and try to gain entry for various reasons, this is going to be the next step. They're really going to want to show up, take a look, and that old saying, that old expression of trust but verify, that's what's going to happen here, right? Is I think I know a lot of stuff. I was on Google Maps, and I know what the neighborhood looks like. I know you've got HVAC on the roof. I know you've got the exit over there, the entry over there. People smoke here. People have coffee over there. But I want to verify that. But I want to approach very slowly, right? So I don't want to get burned too quickly, and I don't want to get a lot of CCTV footage of myself before I have to, right? So as a defense, make it difficult for people to do reconnaissance. If I can't see into your reception and see the process, right, now that's a bit of a mystery to me. So I'm going to be surprised when I come in. So if I have to come in and I can't see, and then all of a sudden, boom, I'm hit with all these questions and stuff, and I can't get out very easily, that's not a place bad people are going to want to spend time, right? So that's really good, is if you can think about that. Then I'm going to look for things that have changed, new opportunities, and then new threats or defenses, right, that I need to watch out for, right, and new patterns of life. So if there's a bunch of new people coming on board, maybe a new vendor that's coming in, maybe there's some construction or anything like that I can take advantage of, I definitely want to do that, right? So if you've got construction workers laying new cement out front, they need to come in and use the washroom. Maybe they've been granted a pass to go right in. I got to put on some coveralls, and maybe I can walk in with them. Maybe they have access to the cafeteria because they're doing the work on site. Maybe they've contracted there. So there's lots of opportunities there, right? Even leaving the door open for them presents an opportunity for bad people to come in, right? I had this once where we were doing construction, or we had the door open for some reason, and we had a person come in and walk right, they went up about 4 floors, and they went into someone's cubicle, picked up their laptop, stuck it in the back of their pants, and they were about to leave the site, and someone came up and said, "What are you doing?" So they saw them, they didn't know who they were, they did the right thing, they're like, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" And this person said, "Well, I'm looking for the bathroom." Well, that's unlikely with a laptop stuck down the back of your pants, right? So, so that was interesting. So that's an example of that, right, where they utilized that open door. Our employee approached them, which was all good, but at the end of the day, that person walked right out the front door with that laptop, so that wasn't good. But now we're going to move on to stage 4, which is ingress. We're going to look at the front door, right? And this was the most public area. This is the place that you would first look at. And I like front doors probably the most, although they're the most challenging, right? So they have the most surveillance. We really focus on that. That's where reception is. That's where we're processing people as they come through. There could be security guards, depending on the building, right? They're definitely going to interact with you in some fashion, right? However, if we can get through that, and if they can buy into our pretext, then we're legitimized. So once I'm through the front door, I may get a visitor pass, I may get a sticker, whatever I may get, or even just that interaction with reception. If that person says, "Yeah, go ahead." Now, if anyone else stops me, I can say, "Yeah, reception let me in, I'm fine, I'm supposed to be here," right? So if an attacker can utilize that, they will. And so I think that would be the main area of focus as far as formalizing that and making sure that if you're legitimizing someone's entry, make sure that it's valid. So again, government-issued IDs, I think, are one of the fundamental ways you can do that, right? Business cards should not be a form of identification. So make sure you've got significant formality at your main entrance. CCTV, even if it's a fake camera, nobody knows, right? It's just real CCTV. But that's really what I would take a look at there. So if we're going to go through the front door, which I would recommend, there's a couple methods we can do, right? Our first one is our passive entry. And so we're going to take a look at that. And one of my favorite techniques, which I love, is utilizing an access card. So if we can clone some access cards, that would be great. Maybe we can identify somebody that we can clone their card with, and then we have access. Better yet, I would bet nobody in this room has tamper-proof on their access card so that you would get an alert by somebody in IT or admin or facilities if I rip off the front case, right? I'm betting, if you do, let me know. That would be phenomenal. But come in there with a shirt on, look official, come in there, pop the lid, put this chip in there, and then I'm going to read all the access cards that are swiped through there. I'm going to take that database, I'm going to find the one that has the most highest level admin, I'm going to use that, and I'm basically going to walk in there now like I own the place, because essentially I do. God mode on all doors, which would be very helpful, right? As an attacker, there's no hesitation. I wonder if this is going to work. When you swipe it, you're in, right? I'm surprised we don't see this more. I really like this approach. It would take a little bit of work to implement, but once you've got it, I think that would be fantastic. Okay, so if you're not going to do the access card cloning, then you're going to really going to go on your pretext, right? So you're going to walk in as somebody that would be allowed in. So that's really up to you. For me, as I mentioned, I like HVAC. I would probably do something like that. I might call ahead and just say, hey, I'm showing up on Tuesday. Is that okay? So now reception is expecting me. They may ask me questions like, they may say, oh, make sure you remember to bring proper ID. Oh, so now I know I need proper ID. Okay, good. And then, so I don't have to take the risk of actually being there. They may tip me off on what's actually required. So that's helpful. I probably am going to come in as some sort of tradesman, because that allows me to have all my tools, all my forced entry equipment, and it doesn't look suspicious, which is great. Bags with other costumes or whatever else I may need. So it gives me a lot of flexibility. So again, you really want to vet your tradesmen as they come in, or any sort of vendors, to make sure that they are legit, especially if they have a whole bunch of tools, right? On the covert method, most of our doors have this kind of, like a lot of them have this nice glass, shiny door where you can see in, and they've got this lock on the bottom. If you have that, and that's your only door preventing people from coming in, this takes about 30 seconds to open. A nice little tool like that, you don't have to get fancy, you just slide that in, turn it, and you're in, right? You probably wouldn't be doing that in the middle of the day. That would be more an after-work activity. But yeah, super easy. So you really need to have layers if that's all you've got. So that wouldn't be in the middle of the day, so that's not something you could easily do, but that tool will get you through. The other option you could have, and now we're getting into forced entry method, is you'll see these lock boxes around. In North America, these are very popular. It may be slightly different over here, but these are kind of key boxes. And you'll see these, sometimes they're a little bit hidden, a little bit hard to find, but if you find one of these typically are going to give you full access to the building. These are typically used by firemen as well. So, and sometimes they'll be centralized. Sometimes you'll find them on a wall. Sometimes you'll find them hidden in the street, underground, different access methods for that. And so these are available. If you do utilize this, then you're going to be going in and you're going to probably have some concerns about alarm systems and things like that. Alarm systems are a bit tricky, right? But a lot of alarm systems have codes for each individual. So if you just type in a common code, you're probably going to turn the alarm off, right? Which is interesting. Also, a lot of the alarm systems will have the contact information at the top of the box that says if you accidentally set it off, just call this number. So there's some options there and some improvements that we could make there, I think, as well, right? So that's another option. This would be, of course, in the evening once everybody's gone, because you are going to set off some alarms. These are some more key boxes, and these are, you probably have something very similar here. Firefighters' boxes, you'll see these in elevators as well. There's a great talk that was given in 2013 at the RSA conference where they go into great detail about using these as an exploit, right? Definitely some ethical issues about utilizing these, but attackers wouldn't really care. So I think when you're looking at these, as a building operator, you want to make sure that these are available for firefighters, but not maybe publicly available for everyone, right? Because if I get access to this, I'm in. I've got access to everything, right? And I never advocate dressing up as a fireman, but people could. Now I'm going to get into some of the tools used for forced entry before we get into some methods of forced entry. And one of my favorite tools, looks very boring, very benign, right, is the wedge. This is an aluminum wedge. If you have aluminum wedges in your building holding open the doors, you may want to swap those out for rubber wedges. But these are fantastic. When we're doing forced entry, we're basically utilizing leverage. We're utilizing mechanical advantage to pry that door open and ultimately make a hole. Wedges allow you to gain ground and not lose ground. They're fundamental to what we're doing, right? They don't look alarming. When you see this, you're like, yeah, no problem. If you see people with a wedge like this, it's probably not a good sign, because a professional would have something like this. It's light, it's very strong, and yeah, so get rid of any aluminum wedges if you're utilizing those for your doors. And then, again, not too alarming, we've got the wedge tip wire cutters. These are fantastic for if you've got studs or screws and you just want to cut the tops off. Very fast and effective, also used for prying small things and stuff like that. So if you've got tools in your building, you want to make sure that those are secure and people can't have access to those, because I probably wouldn't bring my own if I can just use yours, right? So that's something to think about. But those two tools, very normal looking, right? So not alarming. If I had those in my toolbox, you probably wouldn't care, but can be very powerful. Now we're getting a little bit more sophisticated. This is the modified channel lock pliers. You can see the handle's been modified a little bit. And these are great for those cylinder type locks. I don't need to pick the lock. I don't need to mess with it very much. If I can just unscrew it, right, and push the door open. So these are a go-to. You've got it modified, so now it's a bit of a multi-tool, which is even more important, more valuable. The method for this, you can see this done online, utilizing this. It's amazing how quick it is, right? So again, you don't have to pick it, you just remove it. And that's what I love about forced entry. It's not sophisticated, it's just the simplest way in. This tool, most of you are probably familiar with, the shove knife. You can buy this at most security conferences. It's great because it's still very effective. On a lot of doors, especially internal doors, you'll see a bit of a mixed match between the actual handle and lock and the door frame and hole. And so this is still very effective. A lot of us don't put that protective piece in there to stop tools like this. So this would definitely be another bit of kit that you'd want to carry for forced entry. To defend against this, of course, take a look at how your internal doors are set up, right? Usually there's almost no effort put into that, and they're usually just terrible. Usually you can open them with a credit card or whatever else, let alone this tool, right? Getting a little more fancy, this is the New York roof hook. I don't really like this tool, although it is effective. It's very light because it's a hollow design. Yet it's very complicated. So when we're talking about prying things open or just smashing bolts off and things like that, it does work pretty well. I'm going to show you something better. But really, to utilize this well, you need to be a little bit trained in how to use it. I mean, it's a pry bar when it boils down to it, but it can do much more than that. So in the right hands, the better tool that I prefer is called the Pro Bar or the Halligan. And this tool is amazing, right? So if you have the chance to pick one of these up, if there's a lock-picking village or something like that where they've got one of these and you're able to try it out, it's great. It's a pry bar, but it does so much more, right? So it's light, it's super strong, it's short, right? Very powerful. This has been developed over decades, right? So when you're talking about efficiency for forced entry, this is the go-to tool. We're talking a 15-to-1 mechanical advantage. So if there's any climbers in here and you're familiar with mechanical advantage, 15-to-1 is really good, right? Like you're going to destroy things with this. It's because it's small, it works great in confined spaces, and yeah, you can do so much with this, like down to the minute detail as far as taking things apart. If you're interested in this tool and learning a little bit more about it, this guy here, Adam Savage, has a great YouTube video, a couple of videos on it that I'd recommend. He's very, very like high level and basic, but it's really good. And when firemen talk about their tool set, their irons, they're talking about their axe, and they're talking about this, right? The Pro Bar, two of their essential tools. So this would be a go-to. For experts, this is what they would use. Criminals breaking into your place, they're just going to use a pry bar, and it's going to take them much more time, but it's still going to be relatively effective. So those are some of the basic tools at a high level. I could talk for an hour just on any one of those, but it gives you a basic idea of some of the things that we would utilize. Now we're going to take a look at the back door. And this is, if you're not going to do the front door, of course, the back door has great opportunities. Especially when you're doing OSINT against a building, this is one of the fundamental things I'll look for. Because usually it's much easier just to walk in. If there's a loading dock or something like that, I'm going to avoid all the things like the terrain traps and the guards and a really diligent receptionist, things like that. I'm going to avoid all that. However, I am going to run into some really interesting things, and I've run into this, is I'm going to run into a diligence around safety. So if I try to stroll in, I've been stopped before, annoyingly, and they've said, hey, where's your steel-toed shoes? It's like, oh, crap, right? Like, things like that you have to think about. Hard hat, steel-toed shoes, take a look at what people are wearing out there, and make sure there's if there's a safety person out there, which there usually is, watching those sort of things, that's something an attacker may get fouled up on, and that's actually good. If an attacker can come in that way, they're probably also going to leave that way. So some things to think about there around controls. So do you have CCTV back there? Do you have somebody watching the door, right? Is there a key card to gain entry and come and go through there? Sometimes there's not. Sometimes it's just like wide open. You do so much work on the front door, but nothing on the back door, which is a shame, right? So something to think about there for sure. A lot of back doors also just roll out to the back alley. It's very dark. It's very private. So these are perfect for, if we're going to do forced entry, these are great, even covert. I'm going to come back at night, everyone's gone, I can make some noise, it's going to be great. I'm going to have like everything I need. So what you probably want to do here is reduce the privacy for attackers. If your back door looks like this and this gentleman's casing it out, thinking, oh, this looks great, right? That is great, it's perfect. It's a bit, enough light to see, but it's super private. You want to change that. I would put in some CCTV, I'd put in more lighting, I might put in some signs of activity, even though maybe there's not. Things like that, because this is perfect for a criminal. Now let's take a look at some doors. I like this part. I like how we're going to break some doors. So this is a very plain door. This is very typical. I'd say 80% of the doors are going to look like this. Steel door, steel frame, looks pretty good, right? Forced entry, what we're going to do here is just, set a gap and then pop it, right, pretty quick. We're going to use that Pro Bar or Halligan. That's going to be my go-to tool. If you don't have that, pry bar is going to work pretty much the same. Two-person team, you could do it with one person. It'd take a little bit longer, but you're talking 2 minutes. If you have any idea what you're doing, about 2 minutes to open this door, right? Just going to pry it from the lock side, and it's going to open fairly easily. And some people say, well, Rob, attack the hinges. Not so much. A lot of times in the movies or something, they're going to do that. A lot of hinges, if the company is thinking about this, and I recommend everybody should do that, they're going to have some protection on the hinges, right? They're going to have pins that prevent you from removing the hinges, or they're going to have stud hinges, which prevent you from sliding the door out, right? Both of which are pretty effective, highly recommended on any of your other external doors, right? Especially your back doors where that could be a concern. And when you attack the hinges, now it's basically a 3-to-1 problem. If I attack the door handle side, it's going to be much less chance I'm going to get held up, right? So I would definitely recommend that. The tool that you see there, that's for popping the pins on a hinge, right? It's very cool. You pull it and let it go, and it puts some force on there. And also, if you break the hinges, it's very hard to make that look normal again if you're going to try to put the door back. So that's something else to think about. So for defending, I would take a look at your hinges. You can talk to facilities or admin or whoever does that and make sure that that's properly set up there. It's very cheap to do that. Another door. Now this door's a little bit different. We've got a padlock with a deadbolt and a lock, and we've got these suspicious looking bolts here. They look annoying, right? So I put the squares around those so you can see them a little bit better. So those are actually holding a crossbar on the back there, which normally would be a bit of a nightmare, right? Because not only do you have these two locks you got to get rid of, but you have that thing. So a lot of criminals may look at that if they can tell what that is and go, yeah, that's going to take way too much time. But in reality, it's not that bad, really, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to just blow the lock. We can cut the lock or just smash it off. Same with the lock below that. We can probably pry that open or drill it out. And then with the bolt heads, we're going to either smash those off with the flat side of the bar, or we can just drill them off, or perhaps cut them off with our wrench there. So really not that bad. You can see there what we've done. So we've cut the bolts, and you can see the holes there. They just pop off, smash the lock through, and you can see that's the tray that was holding the bar. Sometimes that's a wooden 2x4 or even sometimes steel. And once that's through, those will fall off, right? And that's the easiest way to do it, the quickest way to do it. If you have a drill, you can sometimes do that, just drill right through. I think the vertical smash to remove the end of those bolts are the easiest way. And so, again, that's going to be a two-person team. If you can, one person could do it around 6 minutes, right? So it's not very long if you know what you're doing. Criminals, of course, they're going to take a little bit longer. But let's say it's double that, 12 minutes. Maybe even let's give them a half an hour. Still not it's not very long. They're going to definitely get through this. Anybody seen No Country for Old Men? Anybody? Yeah, okay, great. A few people. Good show. This fellow with the compressed air tank, right? He walks around. He's a psychopath, murderer, and one of his tricks is when he walks up to the door, he just pulls the button and it shoots the door handle through, right, or the lock. Interesting. He's carrying that around all the time, so looks a bit suspicious, right? But you can buy tools like that, which are really interesting. So this tool here, the Cobra Plus, the new one, this picture is about a year old. The new one has a silencer and a shock compression, so it's even easier to use and more quiet. So it's around a 22 caliber. It's like a .27. So it's basically shooting that. And if you look up online, you can YouTube this. It just annihilates locks, right? Whether it be a padlock or something else. Like you just pointed at it, and it's no longer there. So it's great. It's about 230 Canadian dollars. So, if you were a tradesperson or your pretense is as a tradesperson and you walk in with one of those, nobody's going to look twice at that, right? And there's a legitimate reason why you could have it, right? It's like for putting rivets in or whatever you're doing. But yeah, it makes a bit of noise. So even with the silencer, it is going to make a bit of noise. But I think that's better than the compressed air. So that's some of the forced entry methods that we're going to have on the back door and the front door. And now let's assume we're in the lobby, okay? And so it's a complex environment. It's got extensive CTV, security guards, employees that might come and talk to you, terrain traps, right, which are tough. You can see some serious-looking dudes there, right? So that would be scary. That would be not a great place to be, I think, right? So we got to watch out for that. In the lobby, we want to either be extremely comfortable with entering, right, or not comfortable, and so then we want to kind of look at and avoid the lobby, and we want to look for certain things, right? So if I'm looking at a lobby, some of the things that would deter me is, is the receptionist professional looking, dressed up, calm, confident, right? So my pictures switched sides, so I'm never sure what side. So, she looks very confident. I am not going to mess with her, right? Signs on the door that might specify that I need proper ID, I'd walk away at that point, right? Other staff in earshot, right? So if other staff can hear what I'm saying and maybe they're suspicious, that's bad too. CCTV, of course. To defend, train your receptionist, whoever that is, right? Do they get proper security training? They should, right? They are basically the gateway physically into your building, right? And I see so few of them getting the adequate training that they need to be able to do their job. A lot of them do their job phenomenally well, so I would recommend making sure you invest in them. If you're doing security in your company, hey, invite them in, talk to them, right? Empower them, because they do so much for our companies, right? And we typically don't really give them much in return. Some more terrain traps. So now we're at stage 6. We're in the hallway. Hallways are great to catch people, right? And attackers would know that. So they'd be walking with purpose. They don't want you talking to them. They might be on their phone talking away. Maybe upset on the phone is really good, right? Oh, why isn't it here? I'm on site. I need that right away, that part, right? They may be looking at their email. They want to avoid eye contact, because typically we wait till we get eye contact before we speak to somebody, right? So they're not going to want to make eye contact with you. So how to defend against that? If you see somebody in your building, and you don't know who they are, then I recommend you talk to them. But to avoid having every vendor talked to by everybody in your staff, it'd be great if reception would send out a visitor alert, like on Tuesday we're expecting this vendor or whatever, right? Just so people know what's going on. One of the things I've seen that can work, depending on how big your company is. Level changes in the elevator. So I saw a great presentation at DEF CON once, all about elevators. I'm no expert in elevators, but this was phenomenal. So you can YouTube that. I recommend it. It will just blow your mind on the security implications of elevators, right? So if you know anything about elevators, you can own an elevator relatively quick. You can walk in, out of service, close the doors, put a sign on it that says out of order, and just camp in there until they close. And then you can walk out, and now you've got easy access. Maybe the elevator can take you to the parking lot, maybe it can take you to a different floor with a different company, or mall entrance, or whatever else, so you can get easy exit, right? You could come in as a pretext as an elevator technician, which mixes well with that whole technique. So I think this is really important. So if you have an elevator, and security guards and stuff that do their rounds, that might be something to have them take a look at, right? Is one out of order? If it is, why? Who put it out of order? Is that confirmed by the company that does maintenance on your elevators? So I would look into that. Stairs, I always like open stairs like this. Closed stairs, like the traditional cement isolated stairs, unless you have CCTV in there, all sorts of bad things can happen in there. People can hide, people can smoke, people can do whatever they want in there, right? So yeah, I would definitely take a look at that. It can be a bit of a terrain trap for attackers, especially if they have the key card in to each floor, which is pretty typical. But if we've cloned a card or something like that, or been given a visitor badge, then maybe that won't be a problem. So I like more high vis than not. So put some cameras in there if you don't already have them. Now, we're at the executive office. When I want to go in there, I want to make sure that I'm not going to be bothered. If I go in there, it's going to be a bit weird because most people aren't allowed into the executive office. And when I say executive office, that can be any sensitive space, right? And I think that's important to think about. Wherever you're storing physical assets that are important, these rules apply, right? So I'm going to want to make sure people don't know I'm there or I'm 100% legitimized, right? It's a contained space, so I can get trapped in there as an attacker. It's a special kind of ecosystem, right? Because it's going to be different. So if I'm in some sort of secure vault or the executive office, it's going to be very tidy, very clean. I'm going to be out of place, so I don't want to be in there for very long. They're going to have pretexts for if they get caught. Why are you in the office? Well, nobody's allowed in here, right? So it's got to be very, very legitimate. So to defend, high privacy areas should have alerts on activity. So for example, on a data center, if somebody goes into a data center, I want an email that says they're in there. So, and if it's in the middle of the night or at a time when there should be nobody there, I want to see that alert, and then I want to be able to go onto CCTV and see who's there. Now, I even want to be able to turn on the sound so I can hear what's going on, right? Like I want all of that sort of information instantly, right? Be able to act on alerts for this sort of activity. That's what I would recommend. Hard to do, I know, for certain areas, but that's what I recommend. Okay, we're in the executive office. We found the filing cabinet, and for whatever reason, there's something important in that filing cabinet. Couple options. Passive entry. We can nail file. Filing cabinets are pretty easy to open. Nail file, tilt it up, right? Push on the rod. Sometimes that'll work. It's a bit of a mess if you tilt it up. Use the key. So probably going to be able to open the drawer of the desk. That's where all our keys are for our filing cabinets, right? Mine certainly is. Take the key out and open it up. Use a bump key. I'm a big fan of bump keys. I think they're underutilized. And then, of course, force entry, right? If I've got the time and there's nobody going to hear the noise, I'm going to drill the lock or just smash it open. So the defense here, physical assets should have physical controls, right? So I should never be able to get into that executive office and open that filing cabinet if there's something in there that precious, right? So just making sure that we've got better physical controls around that. Escape and evade. So now I've got my stuff out of the filing cabinet. I've made it all the way through using the different options. And now as an attacker, I basically want to leave and not be detected. And this could apply to multiple different things. I told you the story about the person who put the laptop down their pants. They walked straight out the door, right? They went down 4 levels, walked straight out. Our security guard saw them and basically just waved goodbye, right? Security guards, I thought, were supposed to like grab people and tackle them and throw them to the ground and arrest them. Not so much, right? It may be different here, but I don't think so, right? Like our security guards go, oh yeah, okay, somebody broke in, okay, but this time, they're not doing anything. They're not chasing them down. So in different countries, it may be slightly different, but now my expectation of security guards is just to observe, right, and then report. So the expectation there is changed. So I would verify what will your security guards do in this sort of instance. People that want to escape, they're going to move with the crowd. They may pull the fire alarm. They may do various things to mask their escape. They may also leave equipment in certain areas so they're not incriminated, right? So if you do have an instance like this, a physical security incident, you catch the person, but they don't have anything on them, doing a search of the area definitely would be warranted, right, as soon as possible. Bathrooms are a great place to look. Back of the toilet. If you've got a fake ceiling, I would go up there and take a look. I used to have a boss who would always put his sleeping blanket in the fake ceiling, so I know it's utilized by people. So there's definitely a lot of places you can take a look for that, because they're going to want to get rid of most of that on their way out if they can. All right, I think I'm within time, which is good. These are some of the references. You won't be able to read that. It's pretty small. But the very first one here is the New York Fire Department's Forcible Entry Guide. A really good document to read. If nothing else, take a look at that. These slides will be available online, so you'll actually be able to read it online, and you can just click the link and download that. It goes into much more detail than I have just now because of time constraints. I can't go very deep. But it'll show you all the techniques, all the tools that you can then look at. And then you can look at your doors and think, okay, is that sufficient, right? Hinges, I would suggest, are a great place to look. Internal doors, we talked about how you can just pop those open pretty easy, putting some protection on those. That would be a good start. And there's a whole bunch of other resources there as well on physical security, elevators, you name it, it's there, okay? All right.